Hi, guys. Welcome to Hustle to Wealthy podcast, another amazing episode. And today I am here with a really close friend of mine, an entrepreneur and investor, Kyron. Welcome to the party.
Thanks, Paulina, and hey, everyone. Great to be here today.
Yeah, I really like for everyone who's listening and wondering why you should listen to Kyron, me, and blabber on for the next hour or so. In reality, Kyron started as an investor, became an entrepreneur, and he has a really clear insight on are they exclusive to each other or mutually, intertwined, and why you should. How important it is to go from entrepreneur to investor, investor to entrepreneur if you're going from hustle to wealthy. And we're going to dive in straight away. By Karen, I'm going to first of all ask you, um, how do you, who are your clients? How do you help them? And why are you doing it in the first place?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm the CEO of Wealth Mentor. I purchased that within the last 8 months, and it was really around this whole mission of how we make wealth accessible to all. I believe that education is the biggest thing stopping most people from being wealthy, and that wealth itself is probably more the way we think about money. And therefore, if we can take the wealth creation strategies of the rich, of the wealthy, and make them accessible for others, break it down so that absolutely anyone can follow them, then just everything will be better. I believe a lot of crime comes probably from desperation more than anything else. And if you remove if you remove that desperation, if we take away, we live in New Zealand, you're well aware, tall poppy syndrome, like people who are wealthy get shat all over. And I think that's a really bad mindset for Kiwis to have. And so by just simply showcasing that wealth is simply a different way of thinking about money, then I think we can all live happier.
I love it. And I think this is why we connect so deeply, even like as in our partnership between International Academy of Wealth and Wealth Mentor, but the two of us, right? Like
Yeah.
I truly believe if you can take the worry of money off the table, there will be less crime in the house. There will be more ripple effect into the community. There will be happier lives, right? And people actually um, put away their frustrations, their anxieties, their depression, because quite often all of it stems from the fear of not being able to meet the security of financial, like the financial security of life, right, for themselves and for the families. So I'm with you. I go, when I think about the 12 nationwide goals that they've set, I was like, really, there's a ripple effect on everything,
Yeah.
and by the time you take away the worry of money. So that's, I think, we align a lot in this.
What's
However, yeah.
if I expand on that point a little bit further, you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The very bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is literally like survival. And we do live in a world where money is essential to survival. You have to pay for food, you have to pay for water, you have to pay for electricity, you have to pay for shelter. And therefore, when people do struggle with money, it becomes a real fear that my family's going to get kicked out on the street, or we're not going to be able to afford to eat this week, in which case that's directly affecting Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as we've seen from, like Lord of the Flies type stuff, when people's very existence and survival is at threat, that's when they do things out of character, or when, they resort to crime out of necessity. So absolutely, I do dream of a world where Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the absolute bottom layer, is just covered. Like the entire thing is demonetized, and therefore you don't need money to survive, like to literally just survive and live. And therefore it's like, okay, well, now what can I do? What is the human potential within all of us to go and create?
And it's interesting you say this because, like, when I think about like the listeners, right, the people who are tuning in, they all like, well, that's not my problem. I'm making enough cash, right, every month to live the life I live. I've actually the amount of entrepreneurs I've worked with who make 100, 200K a month or more. And they go, yeah, it's fine. But they chase the next deal mainly because of their money mindset of like deep down in their heart. They're like, but do I earn enough? And what if it finishes tomorrow? And what if I can't sustain it? So even if we're talking about the bottom layer and we're talking about crime and people not affording, even in us, like I had to check it over and over again when it comes to my mindset and my money beliefs, it's quite often that even though we might be successful and on the outside we're making all the money, we either spend more than we're making, even if it's, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or we herding cash on the side because what, for a rainy day. And I was chatting to a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, I've got $500,000 sitting in a bank account." And I'm like, "Please tell me that there's at least more than one bank account involved." I'm like, I can't believe you've got that much money sitting there, being eaten by inflation, right? Risking it all. And he's like, "No, no, it's in more than one bank." I'm like, "Well, at least that is, like at least
Yeah.
you've got that step." But like, I think that layer that you're talking about, the bottom layer, the security layer, no, it hits us at every level, no matter how much money we're making sometimes, because it is about changing the mindset, right? Not so much about how much money is in the bank.
And often the more money we make, the more money we spend anyway. So just because you're pulling in 100, 200K per month doesn't mean you're saving or investing 100 to 200K per month. You know, I remember really simple example, right? Way back when I first got started in work, I started working in the mines of Western Australia, which was good money. I mean, I was 21 years old and earning really good money. But that allowed me on my time off to travel Australia, Southeast Asia. Then I went to the oil rigs, doubled my income, and now I could afford to travel Europe. And I wasn't any wealthier, but the amount of money I was spending was doubled essentially. And I've seen that with a lot of people. People who earn a lot of money, but then go and spend a lot of money as well.
And also, like, sometimes, like, we are so good in the work we do, right? Like, I mean, we both work in wealth, so we understand the concept of money probably a little bit better than a lot of entrepreneurs. But you focus on the specialty you have, right? So if you're a marketing agency, you're really good in marketing. You're really good in sales. If you are a business coach, you might be really good in systems and processes. But it's really interesting how often I talk to entrepreneurs who are highly successful and have a lot of money, or making a lot of money, that don't understand the principles of money in, money out, and how to double your money, right? Like how to invest your money and making out of $1, $2 without having to get the next sale, without having to chase the next client. So I want to go back to your past, because you're not like the typical entrepreneur that I interview, where they go like, I had a problem, I solved it, and then off I went and I educated, or like teach others or do it for others or whatever. You went, and obviously you had a job, and then tell us a little bit about how you made a switch from working to investing and then back into entrepreneurship. So let's just dial a little bit into your past. I know we're showing both our age, but like, let's just dive a little bit deeper into, because I'm pretty sure you were on a couple of magazines too, right?
I was. Oh, just on the cover of one, but yeah. So actually, originally, I'm a chef. Started washing dishes at the age of 15. Um, and I always knew I didn't want to be a chef, but I come from a smaller tourist town. There weren't that many job opportunities. You know how some people know what they want to be from the get-go? I knew I just wanted to be wealthy. Like everything was ingrained. Even my nana, who oh, you should do this job because dentists make a lot of money, or this sort of thing that makes a lot of money. And so I became a chef because I had nothing else to do. Everyone said, "Hey, at least it's something to fall back on." And then I chased for money, and I discovered I could earn more money working on the mines of Western Australia. And then I got on the mines and I discovered people who work offshore and oil rigs make more money. So I got the qualifications I needed and ended up working offshore. And then it was like, oh well, what's the next level up from how can I earn more money as a chef? And it was like, well, if you go and work on the tenders, the boats which look after the oil rigs, or you can double your income again, or you could go be a chef in Afghanistan and get paid danger money. And it's like, well, I'm only getting paid because I'm really putting my life at risk, right? First week on the oil rig, the Deepwater Horizon blew up in the Gulf of Mexico. Our oil rig was owned by the same company who owned that one. We got cyclone evac, and it's like there's a reason you get paid more as a salary, and it dawned on me very quickly. There's always going to be a cap with the salary. But because I was surrounded by people who did have great incomes, many of them were investing. I picked up a book on property investing, and I was like, oh, I can actually invest, buy properties, and then they will pay me to live. And so I was like, okay, cool. Quit my job, flew back to New Zealand, and started
Because
building
that's
a.
what you do, right? Quit your
That's
job.
that's what you do. I was working night shift, and between the time difference and the night shift, it was so difficult to look, to judge, to make offers on properties. And so I was like, okay, I'm quitting my job and I'm going back to New Zealand. And I managed to make it work. I bought a number of properties, I sold a number of properties, and I got to the point where I could live life on my terms, and do what I wanted, which was just get paid to travel full time.
I think that's when we met, right? We met, I think you were in Bali at the time when we met the first time. That's like 7 years ago. Um, and I remember you always like, because you also own a company called Freedom Biz, right? Where you
Freedom
talk
Co.
and
Yeah,
you Freedom Co, sorry, where you educate people how to live a laptop, basically a laptop income, where you
yeah,
can earn good money, which is what most of our audience do, good money just using the laptop traveling the world, right?
yeah. Yeah, so that all stemmed off once I'd got my properties, it was like, okay, now it's time to travel. But what people don't take into account is like, what are you going to do when you're traveling? Like, I was 25 years old. It's not like I'm going to retire in the traditional sense, right? And so it's, yeah, I'll start up a business from my laptop. I was able to coach people on buying properties. And, that gave me more income. It gave me ability to increase the quality of my travel. And then as I got more and more into the entrepreneur side, which is really how we connected, it was like, actually, people want to learn how to run businesses as well. So I got involved in that side as well.
So, what do you think is the reason people jump like into, hey, I'm going to create a business, which we all know, like, what is it? 97% of businesses fail within the first 3 years, right? Well, I think the statistics, to be fair, I don't think the statistics are right these days, mainly because we don't create businesses, we create jobs for ourselves, right? So I think there's a clear distinction between, hey, I run a business and, hey, I'm actually just created myself a job to sustain my life, right? Like a laptop income. So, what do you think stops some people going, hey, I'm going to learn to invest and I'm going to learn the basics around money versus, hey, let's show me how to build a business?
It's interesting. I think everybody thinks they already know it. It's a really good question. Um, every No one likes to admit. Actually, it's not even that. I think most people, you don't know what you don't know. And if you've been in it, I started earning when I was 15, so I'm 21 years into it now. And if it's worked for me up till now, you just think you know how it all works. And most people are so focused on making money, they're not looking at what their existing bank account setup is or what their existing financial mindset is, where they got their money beliefs, which is usually from our parents. You just think you know it. It's like I'm gonna it's probably like raising children, right? Like just because your parents raised you and you've now had children, I think people figure they just know what's best because it's their kids, it's their money. They've been doing the same thing forever. And more people are focused on making more money rather than looking after the money they've already got.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is a really like it's a challenging question that both of our business are trying to solve, right? Like we quite often will have a conversation and we share with people what is possible, and they were like scam or too good to be true. I even read today a post saying if it's too good to be true, do you believe it's a scam? And there's like 300 messages saying absolutely can't be good too good to be true, right? But what is too good to be true? This is probably that was my question when I read the post. Is like is it too good to be true because you don't have the education, you don't understand that you can generate 10% a month rather than 10% a year? Or is it too good to be true because it's in a space or in an industry that you have no knowledge on? Like, or is it a scam, right? Like I find it really interesting that people um They are so scared. Like everyone wants money, everyone wants freedom, right? Everyone wants independence. They want to travel. They want to spend more time with their families, their loved ones, etc. Like their hobbies, all that kind of stuff. But everyone is also scared of the same thing. They're like, we want it, but we're too scared to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
Because what if it becomes true? Like we quite often see this in our community with entrepreneurs. They they dig themselves a big hole. They work. They hustle, right? Which is why we have this podcast in the first place.
Yeah.
They hustle because they know how to control it. They understand it, and they are too scared to do like to see what's on the other side of like actually achieving those dreams and the success that they always wanted.
I think you need to go back, and this comes back to where did your money mindset come from? And probably 95% of people go through the same system, which is the school system. And if you look at the school system, all teachers, principals, everyone in that system is an employee, right? And they're following that old age old saying, go to school, get good grades, go to university, get a degree, get a job, climb the corporate ladder or climb the career ladder. And then, if you put a little bit away into your KiwiSaver every week or whatever, every paycheck, then you can retire at 65. And that's like really built into a lot of people. So the minute you start saying, well, actually, that's only one way, and that's probably the worst leveraged way, again, you have to completely rethink your belief around career, around wealth, around money, around everything. And I think it just goes against what so many people are taught.
Well, everyone taught, right? Like, let's face it, every single one of us has been taught this in school, right?
Yeah.
Like, I find it really interesting. I have a friend who's an investor who also teaches part time for fun, and he got kicked out of out of his gig, right? Like, because a 16-year-old came to him and asked him about crypto,
Yeah.
and he just went, and his answer was, "You need to do your research and educate yourself in that subject, and then go and take it to your parents and have a conversation." The parents got so upset by that response that they complained to the school about how dare he talks about crypto in the first place to their teenage kids. And I was just sitting there going, oh my God, right? Like, and he did the right thing. He didn't say go and
Yeah.
invest or do something. He literally said you educate yourself and then you go and talk to your parents. But this is, we all taught that, right? Like, every conversation I have with my father about Bitcoin or crypto or any alternative investment. It doesn't even have to be in the cryptocurrencies, right? My father goes, "Oh no, you can't do that. That's way too dangerous and that's way too speculative." And I'm like, "You've been a trader all your life. All you do is speculate." Right. So because he doesn't have the back end education that I would consider as, yeah, I understand the fully. Now, by saying that though, he's been a trader for 30 years. So now he's probably got a lot more.
Yeah.
And he has, his own knowledge and experience and learning, and he learned the hard way. But yeah, every time I come up, like we have a laugh because Bitcoin's hit over 50K again, and he bought at 39, and I just said to him, just sit and wait and don't do anything. And he sold at like 43, and then he bought at 41, and then he sold at 45, and now he's angry because it's like in the 50s, and all I said is sit back and wait, right? But this is where I think deep down education is the key. And when you're like listening into this, tuning in and going, well, what does this all mean to me? If you have, like, I genuinely think, like I raised at the beginning, if you have cash sitting in the bank account, or you are chasing the next sale because what if I don't make enough or whatever,
Yeah.
um, I truly believe we need to rethink of, instead of hustling along the way and going, okay, how do I get the next sale? Go, okay, how do I make the most out of the sale that I have, right? By investing, it doesn't have to be crypto by all means. There's very traditional markets where you can also do a good return, like you in property. And I mean, you make 6, 7 figures a year just flipping properties. And a lot of your members do too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again, it's just rethinking. I think here's the thing, right? I think most people don't think about the outcome they want. Most people are focused on their income generation, either be it through their business or through their job, right? And therefore, you'd come across this all the time. Therefore, they start accumulating cash because they have no plan, and therefore they start going, "What do I do with this cash?" And that's where they either start chasing returns and get caught up in things they shouldn't, or they just don't actually get any results because they, was it Mark says, you can't just fire an arrow and say wherever it hit was the
It's the
target,
target.
right?
Yeah.
And so unless you know what you're actually working towards in the first place, you don't know how much money you should be making, or what you're making the money for, or where you should be investing to get the returns that you want.
Yeah, 100%. Not knowing your end game, or I think the other side, the flip side that I quite often see is that with our education that we currently have in our system, people go, I need 10 million because 5% will get me where I need to go. So they focus on the 10 million rather than the 500,000 that they need to achieve, right?
Do you know the worst? You would have heard of FIRE, financial independence, retire early. I just want to fire those guys, like just slap them. Here's a plan, Paulina. For the next 20 years, let's like work our asses off, live off 2 minute noodles, like have no life at all, in the hopes that we can then, what is it, sell down 4% of our stock portfolio per year and live an all right life. And I think your original question to me was investor and entrepreneur, right? Like you're thinking like an employee saving money in investment. But then as soon as I learned about entrepreneurship, it's like, oh, there's a difference between saving money and investing it and making money. So as the entrepreneurial side now, it's like, well, if I want to go out and make another 100K and I invest that into whatever investment strategy I want, that's going to fast track everything. I don't need to sit there living skint if I know how to make money. And that comes across then to the losing money. The minute you know how to make money, you're not afraid of losing money. You know, I've lost money. I've lost hundreds of thousands, but I know how to make money, and therefore it doesn't matter. If I lose money, it's like, okay, well, let's just go make more money back then through whatever, through the entrepreneurial side. And therefore you've now got a money making machine which you pump into your investment portfolio, which is just going to fast track it all anyway.
Yeah, I love it. That's so cool. Yeah, I'm very similar. And I think quite often when I talk to entrepreneurs, the one connection that they don't make between entrepreneurship and investing is the fact that if you treat your investments like a business, you're an entrepreneur anyway.
And if you treat your business as an investment, you're an investor.
Exactly, 100%, right? So, and like honestly, the audience that is listening in, think about like how do you pay yourself, right? Quite often, if you're making a laptop income, you're making 100K, you pay your staff, etc. Whatever you are left with, you go, this is my profit, so this is my take home. While I go like I actually pay myself like in three different versions in the same business, right? So I pay myself a wage or a salary every month for doing the work that I'm always doing, right? Like the work that isn't the business owner or entrepreneur's work. That's the not the conversation like this one, but like the mediocre, boring work that you have to do as part of your business.
Yeah.
Then I pay myself as a business owner. Well, after all, you're freaking taking the risk being the business owner, employing these people, or if you're a one-man band, like having all these subscriptions and your outgoings, etc. So even though I pay myself monthly there, I pay myself as a business owner an additional salary, your management salary for being a business owner. And then I go and say, well, but I want my business to return me a return on investment. So, and I set the target up front, right? Like, how much money do I want my business to make me? Because if I'm taking the risk, if I put my money in the first place, I put my time and my effort and everything into it. Well, what is a reasonable ROI at the end, right? Return on investment.
Yeah.
And then I pay myself yearly as an investor as well. And most people go, and the reason I don't just take my profits and go, hey, the money that is left over is the cash that I have, is because I'm training my mind to think three different ways. Like what is the salary that I get that I could potentially outsource if I'm building a business rather than making myself a job? What skill set do I need as a business owner? And what is the rate that I would be paying myself as a business owner? But then also, what return do I want as an investor?
And I think that's a really good way of looking at it, because most people say they can't afford to bring on anybody else, right? But the minute you put that salary in place right from the get go, it doesn't matter if it's you or somebody else. There's just a salary on your expenses list, whether it's going to you or whether it's going to someone else. We're very similar. So Freedom Co is actually my holding company. It's my investment company, where we invest in other businesses, and that's where we bought Wealth Mentor through. So I get paid my salary for being the managing director of Wealth Mentor, and then Freedom Co actually gets paid a management fee as well. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
dividends or profit share off the back of that. Because Freedom Co has operating expenses that it needs to cover as well.
So, while you're talking about your holding company, like obviously you didn't buy Wealth Mentors to become the CEO and do the mundane work. Talk me a little bit about the strategy you had, why you did this acquisition and why you purchased this company. Like, how does it fit into the bigger picture of Kyron Gosse?
Well, perfect. Perfect. So when we first met, as you said, I was living in Bali, and I kind of touched on this when I was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. My goal is to completely demonetize property so that you can live in property rent free. My background's property. I love property. So yeah, how can we create a future where people live in property cost free? They have clean water cost free, and they have an abundance of food cost free, right? And so when I was living in Bali, I ran a co-living space. We had digital nomads able to live there, $600 per month, included accommodation, electricity, Wi-Fi, live-in staff, swimming pool, all of that, right? So it's not free, but it's pretty bloody good. And then I was like, okay, well, that works because everything's stupidly cheap in Bali. How can we bring that to New Zealand? And I was like, you know what? The technology is not here now, but is it just business models? So I saw tiny houses as a solution to that, went down the tiny house route, built a tiny house and lived in it myself for 3, 4 years, just to experience it, right? And it was like, actually, this probably is a viable solution. Um, and went. I bought a property out in Muriwai with the aim to be a tiny house village. We worked out, because of the cost of tiny houses, um, it meant the construction costs were cheaper because of the fact you had 18 people sharing the cost of buying the land. It meant that was cheaper. It had an on-site water well, and it had a commercial property which had a huge roof, so solar would have been really easy. But then also the way we structured it, when you're buying into the land, you're essentially buying into the business, so we could pay out a dividend from the commercial property to all the owners, which would offset any mortgage people took to build their tiny house, etc. So that was the first real sort of attempt to create a business model where people could live. Oh, again, I wouldn't say for free, but like completely decreasing the cost of living, and then filling it with the people I want to live with. People who are entrepreneurial, they're passionate about creating, like solving problems and having fun, right? Unfortunately, I went unconditional and purchased that 1 month before COVID hit. Auckland had, I think we ended up with 6 lockdowns in the end. We just had major trouble with Auckland Council, and the entire deal fell over. And I said, this is twice now where I've started with the physical property to build the community. What if we created the community? And once we've got the community, then a number of them will actually, potentially come live in the actual physical community. I already had a relationship with Wealth Mentor. I looked at it and I was like, there's about 7,000 people in this community. They're all property investors. They all have money. They all aspire for very similar things. If we start with that and we actually create a pathway of how we help people build wealth to the point where they're like, and create that culture where it's, what do you do once you've created your financial freedom? Oh, you give back, you live your passions. Then that would allow me to, one, have access to the capital I require, two, have an inbuilt community of people who I like, who know, like, and trust me, and I'd actually want to live with potentially. And that is the core of why I bought Wealth Mentor. I just saw it as a pre-built community that I already had a relationship with. Um, who and they're all investors. They've all got money.
Yeah, I love that because you are actually you've purchased a property, right? Where you are actually going to build this community of people where you're all going to share land.
So
That's amazing.
this is now the third attempt. And again, it's following the same business models. It's the ultimate philosophy of how can people live for free with an abundance of food, right? And when people say that, look, there's a difference between capitalization rate, capitalization or the capital required versus what we actually pay to live. So yes, whilst so we're buying a $1.6 million farm. It's 44 hectares, and what we discovered is for local council rules, they say it's called a regenerative title. So if we plant 15 hectares of native trees, they'll give us free 1 hectare titles. So I've gone in with a couple of friends. One of them, again, I actually met through Wealth Mentors. So, my plan is theoretically working. And we've all gone in together to purchase this farm. We've got a 5-year settlement, early access to do all the development, where we've said, I've taken all the learnings from both failed, do you call it failed attempts? Learning attempts?
The
I've taken,
educational attempts.
yeah.
You pay for education one way or another, right?
Exactly. So I've taken the lessons from all of them and I've said, okay, we are the landowners. We will have our own separate title. We'll have our own home on a completely separate title. So everything's modular. If the plan doesn't work, it doesn't matter. I still have my home and I've now chosen my neighbors. We also then own a company that owns the actual remaining farmland. And then we've formed a cooperative company, which is a layer on top, which will farm that land with permaculture, some tropic agriculture. Now we're creating food forests, like an abundance of food, right? Like we've already got more food there than we know what to do with, which was the goal. And what that means is that we can have other workers come in, be part of the community. The farm itself is allowed two major dwellings and one minor dwelling. So theoretically, we can have about a community of about 20 people. And my goal with them is to target younger entrepreneurs who will work for accommodation. So in the morning, they can do farm work, and that will be in exchange for accommodation and food. And then in the afternoons, they're building their businesses from a laptop. It's a lifestyle location. It's near Mangawhai for those of you who know Auckland and that region. So you got surf beaches, you got like real lifestyle. So again, third attempt, taken what I've learned from past attempts. And then the goal is that one, I'm getting into my home for stupidly cheap. Like land there is worth $500,000. We're getting our 1 hectare site for $40,000. And then the farming of the actual land will the business income from that will offset any mortgage we take to buy the farmland and the actual building of the home. So that's the goal. As I say, third attempt, looking at what business models work today, knowing that the technology is still in its infancy and isn't quite commercially viable. But we can produce so much electricity, not just solar. Wind there will be amazing. In the Netherlands, they've discovered that you can produce electricity from plant poop. Essentially, plants give off, it's literally like their waste, and that creates an electron which they can form electricity from. So when you start looking at what's actually out there, the technologies are pretty much there. They're just not yet commercially viable because they're still in their infancy. So what I discovered from the Murawai failure was it was just too far. Like it was too foreign for the councils. So we said, okay, let's start with a traditional development or what's within the rules, and we just change it by 1%, right? I've got another development up in the Bay of Islands, right on the Waitangi River. That is not around me and my vision at all. That's again, it's a money-making endeavor. But we said, well, let's do a traditional development. Let's build it around community and lifestyle and environment. And we'll do a traditional development, but we'll just change one or two things to build it into an eco neighborhood, so that council understand it, but we're still slowly, step by step, getting our way, and maybe in 100 steps time, we'll be at that point, which, I have that future vision for.
Yeah, I love it. And I think what truly inspires me by you and your vision and everything you do is that once the need for money and the security, right? Once we are going back to the Maslow hierarchy of needs, um, once you really truly cover the desire of, being financially free or financially stable with what you do and not having the worries about like, what if I lose it all and knowing how to make it again. And this is, I think, what a lot of entrepreneurs inspire. They start with their job, or they start with creating themselves a business, which is really a job, right? And then when they actually get successful, they are so stuck in that mode that they can't think outside for all these amazing things like, what is my greater goal in life, what is, because they're so stuck in the day to day. While what
Yeah.
you did is, yes, you worked through this, yes, you made your money, but you went, okay, I know how money makes money, I know how I can make money. And now that both my needs are covered, money is coming in, I can focus on the things that really matter to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that
Um,
doesn't mean stopping to work, or it doesn't mean, stopping to make money. It just means you can look at what you're making money for and how you make money in a completely different way.
and I think it all comes down to design. Um, so first off is, within the business, we definitely have our ups and downs, right? Like even when
We all do. We
when
all
you
do.
invited me to this, I was like, oh, in the business, it's still at hustle mode. Like I bought it down, I got to build it back up, and I was like, should I even be on this podcast? But with what we're talking about, absolutely, in the business side, yeah, we have our ups and downs. But personally, make sure that I am safe. I always get paid. I always have my investments going through, and my investments are working for me, right? I think back to your other point, the way most people become business owners is I'm a mechanic. I'm in a job as a mechanic. I'm going to go start my own mechanics. And then they become the mechanic, but then they suddenly become an admin. And then they hire other people to become mechanics too. And all of a sudden, they're not doing what they're good at, which is a mechanic. They've become the admin and the tax guy and the this and the that. And it's like, so why did you even go down this route? Right from the get-go, my business is designed to work without me. In fact, that was one of the reasons why I bought Wealth Mentor, because I was at a business retreat, and the question was asked, what if you couldn't work, or how would the business operate without you? And it's like, oh, well, it's no longer about what I know. It's about creating the platform to bring in the best financial educators to be able to get them sharing their knowledge. And that's where I've been completely redesigning Wealth Mentor. So it's not about me or any one particular person. It's a platform which will stand up regardless of what's the hot topic right now, or what's the latest investment, or what's the best strategy, because you can always tell what the best strategy is because they're the ones making money, right? And it's like, cool. And that's what we say, how do we go to those making wealth and share that knowledge? Cool, you're making money. How do you do it? Let's share that knowledge with others.
Yeah, I love the embrace of collaboration versus competition, right? Like we truly like I really struggle when, your marketing team goes, "Well, who is your biggest competitor?" And I'm like, well, we don't have one. And I don't mean that there isn't other educational platforms that are teaching some of the concepts that we are teaching, or in their own method, but in reality very similar. Like, I mean, finances in and out. Um, Once you understand financials, they're actually pretty simple. And the good thing about financial is they never lie. You can't make like it's not like a marketing business where you can go, hey, here's Facebook, or here's TikTok, or here's like, and they have all different strategies. It's like money comes in, money goes out. Like it's a pretty simple model, right? It's
Yeah.
just a matter of how do you make more of that money that is coming in, right?
Yeah.
And how do you spend the money that goes out? But so we could go and say, yes, there is lots of people who are in competition to us. But to me, I go, actually, I believe that we are like, there is no competition, there is a collaboration, because the things you teach, like we are partners, right? There is basics that you teach that we teach, and vice versa. And I've never gone, oh, Kyron, you're in competition with me because you tell people how to make money, spend money, right? Like there's just so much abundance of not only humans out there in the world, but also so much abundance of different views and opinions and money beliefs. And so you are really looking for the right person for you, not the who is better in the job. Because even if like who is authentically, and like you say, who is authentically making the money? Who's making the money, and how
Yeah.
do they, like, are they willing to share that knowledge?
The the biggest aha moment I had was when it went from who's my competition to how do I make money from my competition.
100%.
And that's just like in entrepreneurial levels, that's that next level up, right? Um, and like you say, you could say theoretically we're in competition because we're both teaching financial education, but the minute we started partnering together, we started making money from each other or with each other. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, this works.
And like, not only will we are we making money with each other, but we're also helping so many more people along the way,
Yeah,
achieving their goals.
yeah.
That's just, yeah, absolutely. Like,
And learning from each other.
and also like encouraging each other, and like, even if you're like, if you want to say competition in not the true sense like as a negative, but competition as even like, how do we raise the bar, how do we improve,
Mm.
how do we grow together as entrepreneurs and human beings, and make the world a better place, right? And make our world a better place. Like, I prefer conversation with you than talking about the weather or the rugby, because we are not talking about the weather and the rugby. We're talking about like what investment strategies or what business concepts or models are actually working right now, right? So much more learning in such a short period of time when you're connecting with your competitors in explanation marks.
Absolutely. And I just had a really good thought because I know at some point you're probably going to ask me, what does hustle to wealthy mean to me?
Yes.
And
Well, first of all, what is hustle, and then what does wealthy mean?
well, hustle is the grinding. It's I see it as like the American way, the New York, the like you have no life because you're just trying to make it work. Wealthy to me, wealthy is all mindset. Um, it's the way you think. It's an abundance mindset essentially. There's enough out there for everyone, um, and you can essentially live your life your way. And when I think about hustle to wealthy, you've probably got these guys out there hustling, trying to be the best, trying to be better than their competition. But wealthy is then that next step up, saying, well, it's not actually even about the competition. It's now about the industry. Like if we think about what are we doing for the best thing for the financial education industry, because we just want people to be better financially educated, right? Then it's no longer even about me. It's just what are we doing for a greater good for that industry. And I think that is probably a major mindset between hustle mindset and wealth mindset.
I love it. And I do ask this question every time I interview someone, because everyone has such a different definition, right?
Yeah.
Like, I, when we first even came up with the word hustle to wealthy, right? Like, our whole team was like, no, I hate the word hustle, right? Like,
Like
everyone
that's
was
the
like,
point.
yeah, I was like, but that's the point, because it is such an extreme. And there's people who embrace and love hustle in the sense of they love being in the constant, having to do something in the need. But then there's also people who realize, like you say, that like they have no life. And
Yeah.
how do I transition? And that's the sweet spot for anyone I love talking to, because I go, well, how do you transition? Because it's like you said, it's all in your mind. The only thing that is stopping you from being from hustling to being wealthy and living the life you want is your mind, nothing else.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's what I love about your and my philosophy. I know I could make more money if I worked longer or harder, right? Like, I don't get up, I don't do early mornings. I'm up at like, if the alarm goes off before 7, I get angry and grumpy. And then, even last Tuesday, it was like, I checked in on my calendar and I was like, oh my God, the team have done absolutely everything we need. I was like, I literally can't think of anything I need to do right now. So I just went to the gym for 4 hours. Go for a walk along the beach. It's like that hustle mindset is I always need to be doing something. I always need to be growing. I always need to be better. Whereas it's like, yeah, but what are you doing it for? I want to share a story. I don't know who told me this original story. Um, I'm sure it was based in Mexico, but given you and I both have a relationship with Bali, I'm going to change the location. So, American businessman arrives in Bali, and he sees this Balinese guy just like lying. They have these little houses, these little like shelters on the side of the road, and there's literally no other purpose for it than to just sit there and do nothing or to talk. And he sees this guy lying there, and he's like, "Oh, what are you up to?" He's like, "Well, I went fishing this morning, so now I'm done, right?" And he goes, "Well, why don't you go fishing again, or why didn't you stay out longer?" And he's like, "Well, what for?" He's like, "Well, if you went out fishing there for longer, then you could catch more fish, you could sell them and make more money." And then the Balinese guy goes, "Well, what would I do with that money?" He's like, "Well, you could buy more boats, you could hire some people, you could get more people out fishing, you could catch more fish, and you could make more money." He's like, "Well, then what do I do with that?" And he's like, "Well, you could start to expand, you could get an entire fleet, you could build a business, you could capitalize, you could list on the stock market, you could sell it and make millions." And he's like, "Well, then what would I do with that?" He's like, "Well, then you'd have all the time in the world. You could like just sit on the side of the beach and do nothing."
Yep. I saw like so can totally relate to the story. It's like when the first time I came to New Zealand, which is 24 years ago. I'm showing my age. 24 years ago. I my biggest dream was, are you make calculating in your head how young I was or how old I am right now? I can see it in your face.
I'm a little bit confused. I was like, "So what? Were you like 5? I thought you moved over in like your 20s."
I appreciate it. The first time I came to New Zealand, I was an exchange student,
Okay,
right?
makes
So in the
sense.
yeah, so I was a teenager. So when I first came to New Zealand, I my biggest dream in life was to live in Fiji and own a little tiny bar on the beach. One of our straw hat,
Yeah,
tiny little beach bars. And everyone was like, "Well, why would you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Because all I want to do is look out onto the ocean, go for a dip, for a swim when I need to, have a beer when I want to, right? Sitting on the beach all day." So I can so relate to the story
yeah,
because even today, I go like, people go like, "You truly live your life your way." And like you, our business has ups and downs. And yes, there is a hustle mode sometimes, and sometimes there isn't. And like sometimes and even though it's a lifestyle business that we've built, right, designed specifically to fulfill our goals and dreams, you have these things that doesn't stop me from, no matter how much I'm hustling, it doesn't stop me from enjoying life, right? Like it was my mom's birthday yesterday, so we went to the spa, and like I spent the 4 days before on Waiheke Island, and the 4 days before of that in the Bay of Islands. Like, um, you should be able to live the life you want to live at any given time. And
yeah,
the Fiji, every time I think about, do I want this bar in Fiji? Well, I have the equivalent here now in the South Island, right? Like I live between two ski fields. My business rolls around like ski days. I never ski on the weekend, right? Like I do all these things because I want to live my life. That doesn't mean I'm not thinking about my future, or my legacy wealth, or how I build a better world out there. It just means that I do it on my terms and my time.
yeah. And
Right?
that's probably perfectly when we talk about hustle to wealthy. And as you said, the entrepreneurs making 100, 200K per month, they might have climbed and we talked about before, like the idea of a mechanic changing jobs, whatever. But you might just still be in that job where you've gone from the one doing the physical work to the managers to now managing the managers, but you've designed a job where the entire system doesn't work without you, and it's just more and more and more weight sitting on your shoulders because hustle to wealthy, it's getting out of the that the entire thing needs you to survive, and designing it that other people other people worry about your business more than you do, and therefore you can actually have the emotional freedom and relief whilst you are being often guilt free because other people have an actual interest in running your business for you.
And that's a very different mindset to a lot of probably people who are even listening in and tuning in, right? Like for us, we would, and this is why I said from the beginning, have you created yourself a business or have you created yourself a job?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's so many people out there who are successful, they make millions, right? But everything is reliant on them having to work and having to show up. Or do you build a business, systems and processes and tools around you where even if you didn't show up, your business continued.
Yeah.
And
So
neither of them is right or wrong, but it is a difference between hustle and wealthy mindset, or, and even the goals you're wanting to achieve. So if you are thinking about transitioning and thinking about how do I make myself um, how do I live my life on my own terms, you do need to consider the business model you've built and to go and say, is this actually serving me?
absolutely.
Now, Kyron, for those who are listening and are not questioning, going, shit, am I in the right business model? Right? We've we both had these questions ourselves in the past, and we both shifted business models in the past because it wasn't serving us. So we can totally relate. We get you guys totally. But for those who are now going, shit, like I do want to make the transition, or I do want to consider how to build wealth without me having to be forefront and center in everything I do you have any tips or thoughts of how people can like get started or think about it, like, or what questions to ask themselves to get deeper into that conversations with themselves?
The one which really did it for me is, what would this business look like if you weren't in it? And the minute you can answer that, and I know that's actually scary for a lot of people, because some people are in there because they feel special, or they might have built a brand around themselves, or my customers are only here because of me, right? But the minute you ask that question of how could this business work without me, then that will allow you to redesign that business. Or I really struggled with that. I'd heard that plenty of times before. So I just went and bought an existing business which wasn't already about me, and said, okay, well, now how do I start fresh with this business to create the vision and the dream I have, but so that it's not built just around me.
So if you buy a business that isn't built around you because you've just been through this process, how do you ensure that you don't incorporate yourself into the business that much that it becomes about you, so that you don't repeat the same problem and get stuck in it?
Probably one of the things I do is I look at positions, not so much people, if that makes sense. So I've already designed what I want the end vision to look like, right? The point of when I step out. What does this business need to run without me? And it's positions, skill sets. It's not even around people. So I know that anyone could essentially be replaced. I love my team. I hope you guys aren't watching this, but it's built around people. It's built around the positions of what sort of person is going to be doing this, or managing this particular department. And just like I said with the home, what we're designing up at Mungify, it's all modular. I think the business should be modular as well. Like, we don't have to rely on any one particular arm or product or anything within the business. If at the moment we're very heavily property, but if in 3 years' time the property side just does not work, cut it off and have stocks and shares, or anything else. So I think that's probably another element. I always got taught to actually build wealth, you just need to let go. And it's letting go of this idea that you're the only one who can do any of it. I think as an entrepreneur, you're the one who sets the vision, but it should be other people who execute it. And your job is really just bringing in the resources for others to execute, being it financial or human resources.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, I know your team and I love him too. So if you're thinking about positions rather than team, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna dig you out of this hole right now that you've just created for yourself. So if you're thinking about positions and not people, how do you um, pay the right amount of um, respect is probably not the right word. How do you create an environment or a culture where everyone, like you shared before, buys into the vision
Yeah.
and actually is more invested in your business than yourself, whilst you are holding that position of their roles and positions that I need? Like, how do you build that culture?
So, are you actually asking about culture or more of a how to?
A little bit of both, I guess.
So,
Answer it
so
however you like, but
yeah,
it's like,
cool.
remember that your team members are listening,
No,
so
no, no,
dig
no,
yourself out of that hole.
no. That's fine. I don't think I'm in a hole. So the first one is like we said, we want someone leading an entire department, right? And so when we worked out, like they should have full ownership of that department, and I let them, like I showcase this is a vision of where we're going, and then it's like, how would you get us here, right? And so they come up with a plan. They gave me the remuneration strategy they wanted, and we designed that remuneration strategy so they could make far more money um, through that strategy rather than if they're just an existing employee, right? Because the thing with employees is they always want to make more money for doing less, and I can say that because I've been there. And employers always want to pay less money for someone to do more, and I can say that because I've been there. And so what we did is we redesigned it. So yes, there is a base retainer, but if you hit certain targets, certain sales, percentage of revenue plus profit share and all this, then now it's like they can see how they can make way more money working with me um, by heading up that department. And by me then having multiple product arms, it means, let's say, even if I give away 90% of the profit from one of those arms, I can always add another arm on. So if I have 10 arms, now I'm still making 100%, right? Um, but it's almost helping other people. I see it as, how do I help other people grow their business within my business? And that's where I really talk about that platform side. And then on the culture side, like we fully believe it. You know, at Wealth Mentor, our mission is to make wealth accessible to all. We fully believe it. We go into events and I say, what does this mean to you? And I ask each and every person, this is why we're here. Ultimately, this is what our goal is. What does this mean to you? How do you think we're achieving it by doing this event or this product or blah, 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 right? And it's ultimately anchoring everything back to that. If you're only money focused, the mines were the perfect example. Mines and oil rigs, no one, no one cares about pulling gold out of the ground, right? You are only there because you can get paid a lot of money, and therefore you're always quitting when you can get more money somewhere else. So there's a terrible, terrible culture there. But I know my guys could make way more money if they just went off somewhere else. But they all believe in the mission because we are mission and culture first. Um, and I genuinely go into everything going, how do I make my team the most amount of money? Because if they're making money, then
You make money.
we're automatically making money. Like I genuinely want my team to make so much fucking money. I said I should be the least paid out of all the team leaders because they're all on profit shares and stuff. Whereas CEO, I just put myself as a salary. Like I said, Freedom Co gets benefit and I get the end benefit, but like I want them to be making more money than me.
Yeah, I love it. And I think one thing, and I love this conversation, is went so differently in comparison to every other entrepreneur I talk to. And I think the difference is when I've listened to your even your strategies, right? Like we get taught quite often in the online space, focus on one product, one customer, one sale, right? You're doing this whole one thing until you make. Now, there is truth to that. I'm not saying there isn't, and it is a very simple business model. But if that one customer disappears or that one product disappears, you're out, right? What I love about your approach is you've literally taken, how is the business an investment and how do I secure my investment? Because in an investment portfolio, you diversify, right? So when you go and say how, you want 10 arms or 10 legs or whatever in your business and one falls over, the next one comes in. It's very much like a business, like an investment strategy, right? Going and saying, okay, how do I make individual strategies make me money rather than, looking at one product, one sale. And for a lot of, like, I look at it a lot of time. I mean, there is this invisible, maybe kind of a recession going on. I don't know. I like when I listen to people, they make millions of dollars. Customers are still paying. So I'm going, where's the recession? But by saying that, if anything, like if your business hit a stall, right, and education is depending on in the area you're educating in, it is not necessarily a necessity. It is a nice to have, and nice to have disappear straight away when people don't have money, right?
Yes and no. Well, nice to haves definitely, but I
Nice to
think
have, yeah.
I think there's a difference between education saying, "Hey, I just want to be educated," but I think because I think from the time we're filming this in February, 2024, I do think we're going to see harder times. The national government like has to put a full stop on like all the extreme spending that Labor did. And so I do think we are going to see harder financial times. I mean, it's basic maths. You can't go from $1 million mortgage with 2.5% to $1 million mortgage at 6.5% without it hurting. There's a $40,000 difference in interest that you're paying per year. That has to come from somewhere. So I do think we are going to see that. But I think this is where the mindset shift has to change, and people actually go, okay, what was working isn't going to work. What is working now? And that's the service you and I really provide. It's okay, cool. That no longer works. Let's up level your mindset to thinking differently. And to be honest, it's in the hard times when the best entrepreneurial thinking comes out. And people make more money during the hard times because they're forced to have to do things. During the good times, you can be lazy, you can get cheap debt. But then, when the hard times hit, you don't have a choice. You have to get up off your ass and you just have to do something, anything, which is going to work. And you can't work 10 jobs, right? Which means you've got to try something new. And I think that's where, that's where what we provide is actually really beneficial. I bought the business knowing we would be hitting hard times or that we were in hard times. And it was cool. This is the best chance we have to actually really start making an impact with people.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, like, we even found in our business, and when COVID hit and lockdowns hit, right, and people couldn't go spending money, they couldn't go eating out, they couldn't go coffees, etc., all that kind of stuff. They just said, and they couldn't go out having fun, and they weren't working. So suddenly, let me go a step further back. When I employed a lot of team members in the multiple businesses that I've run, I always used to say if a team member wanted a month off, the chances of the team member coming back after the month long term is minimal. And everyone is like, oh, that's not true. And I'm like, 97 out of 100 people walk away within, if they come back, they walk away within the first 3 months, because it's like the first 2 weeks of your holiday, you are recouping, right? You're sleeping, you're recovering, etc., etc. Then you have a week of fun, right? And then in week 4, you start asking yourself the question, like, honestly, I've got it down to a science because I've been there myself, right? But like in week 4, you recovered, you had your fun, and now you're going, oh, I'm getting a taste of this being my everyday, right? And what do you do when you have a taste of this could be your everyday? Your first question is, how do I make this my everyday? And 97 times out of 100, the answer is, I can't stay in the job that I'm in. I have to find somewhere else. Literally. So
I 100% know because when I worked on the oil rigs, I worked 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. When I worked on the mines, it was 2 weeks on, 1 week off, and that was a problem. 1 week off. By the time you've had a couple of days recovery, you have like 1 or 2 days of fun before you're actually getting ready to go back to the mines, which is why that 2-in-1 just never worked and why it churned through so many people. And I did literally that, 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. And I was like, okay, I need to find a way to create this full time, which I did through property,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So this is the look. I used to when I first came to New Zealand, I used to take 4 weeks off every year to go and see my family, right, in Europe. So I would travel to Europe every year for 4 to 5 weeks. And every year, week four hits, and I go, why do I have to go back? Like, like literally. So and I've experienced this, like even with my employees, like, um, someone would come to me and they'd be like, I'm, burnout, exhausted, tired, wedding, whatever their reason was. I want a month off. I'd be like, yep. And then as soon as they were off, I was, now I need to write an ad, and everyone else in my team were like my management team were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, this person will quit within 3 months. And it is because of that potential of, but there is better out there. It's not even necessary that, oh, I'm not in the right place, or I'm not being treated well, or I'm not earning well for the position I'm in.
Yeah.
It's literally that idea of there is something better out there. And like you said originally, as an employee, most people go, there's something better out there, I'm going to find myself a job that pays more, right?
Yeah.
But back to what I actually wanted to share is, so when COVID hit, so with that in mind, when COVID hit and everyone had 6 weeks off, right, all around the world, you literally saw a proof to what I've just said, because everyone had the time off, and everyone started going, how do I invest? How do I educate myself in financials? How do I make more money? How do I make money without having to work, right? Like, you check like Google records, YouTube records, like you will see the numbers skyrocketed. Our business quadrupled because people had time, they wanted to get educated, and they didn't want to go back to what they were doing in the past. Like, they got the 6 week break that they needed to go and say, okay, I've recovered from being tired. I've twiddled my thumbs for a week. That was cool. Now what? Now what am I going to do next, right?
Yeah.
And I think the key thing, what I'm wanting to share, is that in the industry that we are working in, between like creating wealth, if you are going, hold on, I'm making money, or like we're thinking of the audience who's listening to this, I'm making money, I've got cash sitting on the sideline, but things aren't changing for me inside my mind, inside my heart. Like, you're getting more and more successful, but your life isn't actually turning around to what it needs to be. You really need to have a deep think about, how do you change your money belief system, and how do you change your relationship to money for something to change for you.
Absolutely.
Anyway, this is an interview with you. I am really passionate about it, because, and I don't know, like, we've had this conversation. This is like going deep down now into our business tactics, but we always go and say, we know that the number one thing that people need is changing the money belief system. We also know that we cannot sell, hey, change your money mindset, because no one
Oh,
believes that they have an issue with money.
no, everybody wants the outcome. I've I've had it taught to me as chocolate covered broccoli.
Yeah, pretty much. I love that. Yeah, exactly, right? Chocolate covered broccoli.
Yeah.
You want one thing, but really, it is all in your mind. Now, Kyron, while we're talking about mindset, I would like a view from you. Um, why did you decide to go into financial education rather than going, hey, I'm going to become a financial advisor or a financial planner and manage money, rather than educating people? Or was that even a consideration?
It just never even occurred to me. I, I've never been around financial advisors. I've never had a financial advisor. I mean, you the way you create wealth is you look at those who are already in the position where you want to be, and you pay them to learn how they got there. And so I've literally never ever been like, when you talk about financial advisors, for me, I've been around like mortgage brokers and insurance brokers, right, who have to be a registered financial advisor. Um, but like, they're not in the position where I want to be. So why would I talk to them? I look at the business owners. That's I never ever got taught that I could be anything but an employee. And it wasn't until I was actually out there on the oil rigs that I started going to seminars and stuff. And it was like, well, you're in a position I want. You didn't do that as an employee, right? So Yeah, I mean, again, I think financial advisors are probably just like the school teachers that I talked about. They're in the system teaching what they've been taught to teach or tell or sell or whatever, but they're not actually wealthy themselves. They're hustlers.
Yeah, love it. It's like it's quite cool because you're like, oh, I never thought of this, but I actually really love your answer. Like, look, disclaimer here, right? Like throwing the disclaimers in here. Um, there is a need for financial advisors, right, and financial planners. We are not preparing them at all. The question I have, or the challenge that I'll set anyone who has a financial advisor is, why did you pick a financial advisor versus educating yourself? And I honestly can, hand on heart, with everyone we work with, say that people who choose to go financial advisor rather than financial education, because they're not exclusively, you know, they're not exclusive to each other necessarily. But the reason people do it is because they want to put responsibility onto others. So now I go, if you've earned this cash, it's sitting in your bank, you're giving it to your financial advisor to manage. Why would you give that hard earned cash that you learned how to earn in the first place to someone else and like take the responsibility off the table?
I'll give you a really good example. One of my old school friends caught up with him recently, and he was working with a different a competitor per se, right? A different property education company. And there are people out there who pose themselves as educators, but what they're actually doing is they're just salespeople. And so when a lot of New Zealand's tax laws around property investment changed during the last 3-4 years, it suddenly became really popular to buy new build properties because you could get interest deductibility on them. So a lot of these education companies just started telling people buy a new build, and you'll be able to claim interest and da 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 da. And meanwhile, they're getting a kickback from all the developers. So my friend, he's there. He's with this company. He got given the mentorship or the coaching, and and so the coach is like, "Yep, you should buy a new build." Da 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 da. He's like, "Well, why? How is that going to help me get ahead? How do I leverage the new build in order to get the next one? Because I can't add value to the new build, right? The developer's already done that." He's like, "Yeah, but no. If you sit there, you wait. You might wait 10 years. You can buy the next one." And he's like, "Well, do you buy new builds? Is this how you built your wealth?" He's like, "Oh, no, 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 no." And it's like, well, why the bloody hell are you telling me I should do this when you're not doing it, right? So very, I wouldn't say sneaky, but you need to look at people's business models. Like, how are they actually getting paid, and why are they actually recommending it? And ask them, what does your wealth portfolio look like? One thing I know,
Yeah.
I love talking. You know that about me by now. Um, you're talking before, and I think one term you guys use is financial independence. And that's what the education gives you, financial independence. I fucking love it. I'm so glad you use that word. Because for me, as long as I've been around, it was financial freedom, the ability to get paid without working. But financial independence, yeah, now you're taking your financial sovereignty back. It's not it's not about, do I have to listen to somebody else? It's, well, I already know how to make my own decisions, and does this work in with my wealth plan for where I'm trying to get to?
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone, for what Kyron is actually referring to, financial independence versus financial freedom is, like you said, you make enough money so that like your portfolio makes you enough money, or you can be financially free with anything. You could get an inheritance, you could, like make a good month and you go, okay, I can live off this for a year or two, but it is all temporary and you always have to chase the next thing. Well, financial independence is where the true wealth sits, right? Where your wealth stands the test of time, like where you can take off investment strategy or a arm of your business and you're still surviving and you're not impacted, and you're building legacy wealth. So a very different mindset. Now, interestingly enough, we talk a lot about financial freedom these days. We never used to. We always said financial independence, but Google Analytics tells you that no one searches for financial independence. They all search for financial freedom, right?
Chocolate
So
covered broccoli, Paulina. Chocolate covered
exactly,
broccoli.
chocolate covered broccoli. So 100%. But to me, I go, you are right. It's like taking why. So the reason why I asked the question about advisor and financial planners, I have no issues with it. And your story is the perfect one. Like advisor, anyone who's certified, by the government to give that kind of advice, they are certified by the government to give that kind of advice. So they can only give advice that the government believes to be true, right? Now, I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories because that's going to be another half an hour just on that topic. But what I did want to say is you want to educate yourself. You want to have the understanding, even if you take the financial, financial advisor or financial planner on, what you said is having enough education to be able to question the person who is giving you the advice in the first place is like, this is how you build your business. You didn't build your business by going, hey, I'm going to trust someone with it and they're going to build it for me. You build your business by going, I need to learn from someone who's been there. I need to learn from someone whose business model I believe in, who is making the money that I want to make, right? Who's got their finger on the pulse. So going, like, to me, from an investment perspective, going and taking that hard-earned cash and going, hey, can you do something with it and invest it wisely for me, just like goes against everything that you as an entrepreneur stand for.
100%.
I
Absolutely.
see, very
Absolutely.
passionate, both of us, very passionate about this. All right.
You wouldn't trust someone else to raise your children for you. Why would you really trust someone else to grow your money for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so true. That's a good analogy I'm going to use again.
Take it.
See? Yeah, I will. I will claim it. I will give you credit. So, Kyron, for those who have been listening and tuning in for us ranting really about passion about education, right? Um, how can people connect with you? How can they find a little bit more about you? How can they reach out to you if they want to learn a little bit more?
So I'm quite lucky. I've got a very unique name. As far as I'm aware, I'm the only Kyron Gosse in the world. So literally, you can see how it's spelled here if you're listening, Kyron. Just Google. That's the easiest way. I'm across all social media platforms. I'm a social media junkie. So very easy. Otherwise, the best way, wealthmentor.co.nz as well. Or just
Awesome.
hit up Paulina. She
Well, or just click in the links below and check out Kyron's companies. I do think your team is amazing. The work that you do, Wealth Mentors does, but also like, your holding company. Like, I think it's incredible that there are people like you out there who are, wanting to make sure that wealth is accessible to all. We have a very similar mission, very similar passion. And I'm looking forward to doing this interview again and seeing how your project is coming along, how version 3.0 of your business model is working, and how many iterations you still have ahead of you to actually achieve it. And I'm saying this.
hopefully not many.
Yeah.
We've just resubmitted resource consent to council, so fingers crossed within the next month it's all done and we can get planting trees.
Yeah, super exciting. And I just love the vision you have for the world. So thank you, Kyron, for taking the time. For anyone who's listening in, take your time to check out Kyron's social media. He is a very sociable guy, so he connects pretty much with anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about what they do. And Kyron, thank you for your time and for all your wisdom. Looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Paulina.